Beneath the glitter, fame, and roaring crowds, classic rock's biggest legends hid secrets darker than anyone imagined. The industry protected them, the media covered for them, and fans never questioned the illusions. Today, we pull back the curtain and reveal the lies, addictions, double lives, and hidden truths that shaped the icons you thought you knew. Freddie Mercury, the private life, behind the legend, behind the dazzling stage persona, and unmatched vocal power. Freddie Mercury lived a life filled with secrets that the music industry helped protect. His public image was crafted around flamboyance, charisma, and mystery. But few knew the emotional isolation he carried behind closed doors. Mercury carefully separated the man from the myth, balancing pressure from fame with the desire to keep parts of his identity entirely his own. Record executives, journalists, and even close friends maintained a respectful silence about his private relationships, fears, and health struggles. While he projected confidence and theatrical brilliance to millions, his true vulnerabilities were hidden beneath layers of performance. This dual existence created one of rock's most compelling contrasts, a superstar adored worldwide, yet profoundly guarded. The industry's protection allowed him to define his own narrative right up until his final days. David Bowie reinvention. Masking turmoil, David Bowie's genius for reinvention became both his greatest power and his shield. Fans saw Ziggy Stardust, the Thin White Duke, and countless other personas, but very few saw the man beneath the transformations. For years, Bowie's management and label encouraged his shifting identities, understanding that his chameleon-like image kept audiences mesmerized. Yet behind the spectacular creativity, Bowie concealed long periods of emotional instability, artistic insecurity, and intense personal confusion. His flamboyant public statements were often strategic diversions from private struggles, crafted at a time when the industry thrived on mystique and image control. Journalists avoided digging too deep, preferring the myth over the reality. Bowie's carefully curated illusions helped protect him, ensuring that the world saw what he wanted them to, seen at the internal battles he fought away from the spotlight. Elvis Presley, the manufactured king. Elvis Presley became the face of American rock culture, but his public persona was one of the most meticulously engineered in music history. His management built an image of the polite Southern heartthrob, a wholesome cultural icon, but this facade hid deep emotional wounds, health issues, and growing dependency struggles. The industry protected him at all costs, shielding fans from the chaos unfolding behind Graceland's doors. Reporters were either intimidated or incentivized to maintain the illusion of perfection. As Elvis struggled with isolation, fame pressures, and harmful habits, the myth of the polished superstar continued untouched. Even as his physical decline became obvious, insiders worked tirelessly to sustain the legend. The result was a life split in two, the untouchable king adored by millions, and the troubled man hidden beneath a carefully maintained empire, Janis Joplin. The pain behind the power, Janis Joplin's thunderous stage presence and raw emotional delivery, made her an icon. But few fans understood the deep loneliness she battled privately. The industry marketed her as a free-spirited, wild-hearted rebel. Yet much of that image was designed to distract from her insecurities and desire for acceptance. While her voice shook the world, her inner world was fragile. Managers and promoters capitalized on her rebellious persona, glossing over the mental and emotional struggles that fueled her performances. Journalists romanticized her chaos instead of questioning it, creating a narrative that both elevated and trapped her. Her private letters revealed a desperate longing for connection that clashed sharply with her public image. Janis lived and died with contradictions fierce on stage, but painfully human behind the myth. Jim Morrison, the poet lost behind the icon, presented as a mysterious rock god. Jim Morrison's darker realities were long concealed by an industry eager to maintain his mythic appeal. The Lizard King persona overshadowed the sensitive, intellectual poet who grappled with instability, addiction, and self-destructive impulses. Management framed his unpredictability as artistic brilliance, while the media glamorized behavior that should have raised alarms. Morrison relied on grand performances and cryptic lyrics to mask deep emotional turmoil, and those around him often encouraged his excesses for the sake of publicity. Even as his health deteriorated, the machine around him protected the legend rather than the man. His death only amplified the mythology, leaving the truth buried beneath decades of romanticized chaos. Jimi Hendrix, a star shielded from his struggles. Jimi Hendrix redefined the electric guitar. But the world saw only his genius, not the heavy burdens he carried. Managers and promoters exploited his talent while downplaying his exhaustion, emotional strain, and increasingly dangerous habits. Hendrix was marketed as a mystical virtuoso, a symbol of limitless creativity. Yet few acknowledged the isolation he felt as fame devoured his personal life. His circle kept press coverage tightly controlled, casting him as a visionary instead of a vulnerable young man facing intense pressure. Despite his groundbreaking success, Hendrix struggled with identity, exploitation, and burnout. The industry's silence preserved the illusion long after the man beneath it began to fade. Kurt Cobain, the voice of a generation who felt unheard. Kurt Cobain became the unwilling symbol of a cultural movement. But the public never saw how deeply he resisted that role. While fans embraced him as the spirit of authenticity, Cobain lived under crushing internal conflict. Labels glorified his pain, the press sensationalized his struggles, and those around him often blurred the line between support and exploitation. His attempts to protect his privacy only intensified the scrutiny. Cobain hid behind sarcasm, humor, and misdirection, trying to distance himself from the mythology forming around him. Yet the industry kept pushing the narrative of the tortured genius, one he felt increasingly trapped by. His public voice was loud, but his private cries went unheard. Stevie Nicks, the hidden costs of stardom. Stevie Nicks' mystical, enchanting stage presence hid years of emotional upheaval and personal sacrifice. The music industry loved her as the ethereal, mysterious rock goddess, an image she leaned into but never fully lived. Behind the flowing outfits and enchanting performances were difficult relationships, crushing pressure, and dangerous personal struggles that rarely reached the public. Fleetwood Mac's internal dynamics were legendary, yet the deepest wounds were kept out of sight to preserve the band's marketable image. Even at her lowest points, the industry preferred the fantasy over the truth. Stevie carried the weight of expectation gracefully, but the hidden costs shaped her life for decades. Axl Rose, chaos masking vulnerability. Axl Rose became synonymous with chaos-light shows, backstage explosions, public feuds, and a volatile temper that fed the tabloids for decades. But much of this persona was a carefully constructed mask, amplified by an industry that realized controversy sold just as well as music. Behind the fury was a man shaped by a traumatic childhood, identity struggles, and untreated emotional wounds that few people within the Guns N' Roses machine were willing to confront. Executives and promoters preferred the wild outlaw storyline, turning his instability into a marketing weapon. Headlines mocked his anger, but almost no one acknowledged the anxiety, paranoia, and deep-seated pain that fueled his reactions. In private, Axl was reclusive, introspective, and often overwhelmed by the weight of expectation. In public, he was pushed into the role of rock's last great rebellion image that locked him into behaviors he could never fully escape. The world saw a storm. Almost no one saw the broken silence before it. Fame didn't just magnify Axl's inner battles, it hid them behind a mask of spectacle, leaving the vulnerable human being beneath almost invisible to the world. Keith Richards, more than the myth of indestructibility, Keith Richards became a living urban legend, rock's immortal outlaw, the man who survived every excess imaginable. His reputation was built on sensational stories, exaggerated tales, and a seemingly supernatural resistance to self-destruction. But the larger-than-life caricature overshadowed the far more complex individual underneath. Much of Richards' myth was intentionally engineered. The Rolling Stones brand thrived on danger and rebellion, and the industry protected that image fiercely. Negative press was managed, sensitive details were buried, and only select journalists were granted access, always under the condition that the legend remained intact. The result? Keith wasn't seen as a human being, but as a symbol of indestructible decadence. In reality, Richards carried his own emotional demons. Lifelong pressure to remain the Pirate King, strained relationships, the grief of losing loved ones, and the constant battle to reconcile the persona with the person. The world celebrated the spectacle of Keith Richards, the immortal survivor. But the man behind the myth, thoughtful, vulnerable, and introspective, rarely made it past the filters of an industry determined to keep the legend alive. His story is not one of invincibility, but of endurance, of a musician navigating fame, expectation, and identity. While the world embraced a fantasy, the industry carefully crafted around him as the curtain falls. One thing becomes clear: these classic rock legends weren't just living double lives, they were surviving inside myths the industry built around them. Managers hid the scandals, labels rewrote the stories, and the world embraced polished illusions instead of imperfect humans. Yet behind every hit song was a secret fear, a buried truth. A quiet battle no spotlight ever showed. Their lies weren't always malicious. Often, they were the only shield they had. And maybe that's why their music still hits so hard. It wasn't the perfection we connected to it, was the pain they never said out loud. Thanks for watching. If you want to keep uncovering the real stories behind rock's greatest icons, make sure to subscribe, because there's still so much left hidden in the shadows.